Welcome to StartupJab.
Hey, everybody. Glad you could join us. Unfortunately, it's just me and Teague at the moment. Our guest, Seda, is having a little bit of trouble connecting, so hopefully we'll get her in shortly. But while we were off record getting ready to start, we had a good question from her, actually, which was how is Broadway, which was the topic of conversation, relatable to the lean startup method? And I'd say iteration is probably the strongest connector. You spend a lot of time, building an idea, editing it, getting reaction, getting feedback, testing it against other concepts. I don't know that you can really A/B test Broadway or musical theater, but I suppose that there might be an opportunity there, right? Some sort of, do you like, sort of the placement of this song over another in terms of show order? I don't know.
Well, there's certainly a lot of iteration. I mean, Lin-Manuel Miranda said he spent 6 years writing Hamilton, including an entire year writing just one song, and a lot has changed over that period of time, right?
Yes, very much so. Well, and not to mention the fact that, I mean, there are changing tastes in theater all the time. I mean, what used to be popular with, Rodgers and Hammerstein, or even, back in the days of the popularity of Andrew Lloyd Webber, which, thank you God, that has waned, or at least on the popular scale. I'm sure high schools across America are still performing Cats. I think that there's a lot more, because of the ever increasing commercialization of theater, particularly on Broadway, and the big companies that are now backing theater shows. There's probably a lot more of a push to get it right out of the gate. Previews are no longer looked on as really truly previews, as really just sort of an early showing of it. It used to be that previews were a lot more of an opportunity to actually work out the kinks, I guess. By the way, since go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, how many shows actually start on Broadway as opposed to starting, somewhere as an idea and then getting built out and modified and end up making it there once they've worked out the kinks in other venues?
Very few. I would agree with that. I think more often than not, as I understand it, unless you are backed by, Disney, right? You're doing a Disney level show or a Spider-Man Turn Off the Night or something like that. The vast majority of shows, if they're sort of destined to be Broadway bound, usually start at a regional theater of some kind. So here in DC, for example, shows that would start at Studio Theater or Woolly Mammoth, or things that would start in Chicago at the Goodman, or perhaps I'm blanking on the name, but basically the major regional theaters are the places where that stuff usually starts. Every now and again, you hear about a show that, somebody mounted in a 99 or under seat theater, a black box kind of thing, that then suddenly gets picked up and sort of rides the wave to success. But more often than not, the shows that end up on Broadway were workshopped repeatedly in lots of different places. We did it! Yes! Hey. Hooray!
Hello.
I'm so sorry for all those technical problems, but we're so happy to see you.
Hello. Sorry. P.S. The iPad iPhone app worked.
Excellent. All right. Good.
Love that.
Yes. Well,
very cool.
Please don't let me interrupt the conversation.
No,
this was really
super
good.
Boring. I'm just talking a lot. It's fine.
No.
For those of you who are listening, you might be interested to know that Jason, in fact, does have a theater background, and so he actually knows what he's speaking of when he talks about this.
Oh, and we just lost Seda. What is happening?
Seda just disconnected again.
Damn it.
Technical difficulties.
Wait, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Well,
it looks fine on my end.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we can't see you, but that's...
we can hear you.
We can still hear you.
Maybe I'll come back in and out. I don't know.
Sure. Can you in the chat hear her? That's not just us, right?
Folks in the chat can hear Seda, hopefully.
Hopefully. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
1, 2, 3.
Okay. This is odd. We'll make sure to file a bug report.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the meantime, welcome to StartupJab.
Yeah. Well, Seda, why don't you tell us a little bit about, where is Brittany? I'll see if she's online. In the meantime, Brittany's the help person for Blab. In the meantime, Seda, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and the work that you do?
And about District Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I am the founder of Lighthouse Global Business and District Lighthouse. I have a background in product development and product management that ranges from the Washington Redskins through the VA, the My Health eVet, which is the first online patient record system, to the National Restaurant Association's environmental initiative, all the way through working with and in a number of startups. And through my process, about halfway through my career, somebody handed me a book called Lean Startup. And I said, oh my God, this validates my whole life.
Nice.
I think it was a combination of learning something as well as putting a construct around business practices that I found that I was doing the whole time. And the things that actually provided success in the projects that I created, or programs, products, companies. And so it was pretty cool to have that, finally put some words around what I was doing that everybody agreed upon, and then move forward and being able to say, okay, now we can do this with this, and we can do this because we have a more widespread buy-in. So that is my history with Lighthouse Global Business. We help companies from around the world enter the U.S. market, and we do this from getting them set up through product market fit analysis. That's what we tell them, but really it's just doing some problem interviews and some lean startup techniques to make sure that they're making the right steps as they come into this new market and how they're entering the market, and then all the way through getting their first customers. And the District Lighthouse is something that I'm in the process of developing, which is a co-working space geared toward B2G companies. And that's companies that work with and for the government, or with and for those that work with and for the government. So those who service the government in any way, shape, or form, as well as having a component where we help veterans transition to this type of work as well.
Very cool.
Yep. So that's my background. And I hang out with Teague and Jason a lot.
we can't hold you accountable for that
against you.
Yeah. Well, it seems that the answer to solving your disappearing act, unfortunately, is to have you leave the app and then call back in, which we've done now several times. Since we can keep hearing you, I guess we're okay. I mean, it just means you're not visible, which is odd. Do you have a preference, Seda? It's up to you.
I don't have a preference, as long, if you guys don't.
Then we'll keep going because we can hear you. And really, the important thing is to hear us, not to look at not really to look at you, not to look at us. But we'll take this. Yeah.
They got to see me for a split second. It's all good.
Sounds good.
That's true.
Anyway, well, that's really cool. So what is it about Lean that inspires you? What is it that drives you to, and we're not going to obviously stay with this topic. Don't worry. I know everybody's sick of me talking about Lean. But what is it about Lean that attracts you to want to use it in your day-to-day business?
Honestly, it's the fact that we don't have to call it Lean. And the fact that it allows for, disagreements. Let's say, for instance, I have an idea and I think it's the best idea in the whole entire world. And let's say I'm in charge of the product, company, whatever, and somebody comes to me and they say, I don't believe your idea is correct. I believe that this is the direction it should go in.
Right.
And it's the ability to say, you know what, let's let the market, the customer, the product answer the question, as opposed to my hubris over your hubris. So it definitely helps resolve conflict and get out of the idea of what I think is right versus what the market wants and needs, and solves the problem. And one of the things that I always talk about is, especially with different startups or companies, is, do you have a problem in search, or do you have a solution in search of a problem?
Yeah.
And Lean kind of makes sure that you don't put that out there. Is make sure that whatever you're trying to do, you have validated that there's a problem to go after before you spent all this money on creating a solution. Because I've seen so many times over again where somebody spent their whole life, earnings or their savings starting a startup, and they do all this work for years, and they have their spouse or whomever supporting them, and then all of a sudden it's the market doesn't need what they've created, and they've wasted all this time. So it's the ability to save arguments, save time, save money, and thereby save headache. So it just makes sense.
So when you were talking about your background, right? I've heard some of this before, but I always think it's so interesting. You have, you've worked for a professional football team. You've worked with, with the federal government, with with now starting a startup incubator, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up, when you were a kid? Did you imagine any of this?
I wanted to own a football team.
Any team in particular?
I wanted to be Cameron Diaz from Any Given Sunday.
Nice.
But I wanted to get it myself instead of inherit it from her dad. But
there you go.
I didn't think that I was going to go in this direction, but I just knew I wanted to build stuff. In the beginnings of my career, I realized very quick that I liked solving problems and I liked building things that solved the problem. And one thing I heard over and over again is people saying, like, some people like to solve problems, some people like to build. And it's the entrepreneurs that like to do both. Yeah. So it's, that's what kind of started pulling me into this direction and saying, all right, I love it here. And I love the puzzle of solving a problem. And being, going in the direction of the business incubator, I get to help, a ton of people. Like this morning, I had a meeting with one of the people that I'm working with for the district lighthouse, and we met at a coffee shop down the street, which is one of the issues that people want co-working spaces, is they're sick of meeting in coffee shops. And we were talking for a while, and then this gentleman, we were kind of wrapping things up, and this gentleman leaned over from the table next to us and said, "Hey, are you guys building a co-working space around here?" And we're like, "Actually, yes, we are." And he says, "Can I give you my card? Because I would really like to be in it." And so he came over and he started talking about his business and his startup. And we then spent another 20 minutes talking about his business and what directions he could go into. And I just came out so energized. And I just remember saying, like, I'm so happy I had these two conversations right before coming and talking to you two, because, it just makes you, this is why we're in this, is being able to say, have you tried this? Have you tried this? And Lean gives you that opportunity and teaches you how to test things and try them and then just see what sticks, instead of, going down one route so far that you can't turn around.
Totally. So Seda, one question from the chat here. Would love to hear what you've done in the food industry. Do you have experience working with, restaurants or the culinary world? And if so, what has it been?
Or stadium concessions?
Well, I worked for the National Restaurant Association. I managed all of the internally developed products. But while I was there, I had the opportunity to create, build, and launch the NRA Conserve initiative, which is the environmental initiative for the restaurant industry. And this was basically an opportunity for me to work on building alliances and also do a lot of problem interviews. Like, again, I didn't know what problem interviews were at the time, but we talked to so many different restaurant operators, from your small independent restaurant operators that may have 1 or 2 units to, talking to Subway and McDonald's and, the things that they're doing and their needs, wants, and goals. And then building a program that helps meet as many of those as we could at the time. And it's been really cool to see that program grow, especially, given some of the folks that run it now. It's awesome. Yeah. So I've been working with the restaurant industry on a lot of that, a lot of the environmental side. It's been pretty cool.
You mentioned sort of customer interviews or problem interviews, and we know a little bit about what you're talking about, but maybe you want to go into a little more detail for the folks who are coming to Lean Startup for the first time. When you say, problem interview, what are the common misconceptions about doing those?
Well, one of the biggest that I've found with the problem interviews is people use it to validate their ideas, like validate what they're thinking, as opposed to problem interviews are more to find out what everybody else is thinking, and then to create an idea or construct a solution around it. People think it's to say, I've built this solution. Do you like it? Or do you need it? Instead, it's to sit back and say, okay, here's a problem that here's an environment that we think is going on. You know, I've let, you know, a lot of people may even start off a problem interview saying, I've seen this. Given my experience, I have found that there are a lot of restaurants out there that are looking to go energy efficient, looking to increase the energy efficient lighting in their restaurants. And we want to see what are the challenges and how to best make this happen for them. And here are the problem, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself. And you get some demographic information from the person you're talking to, making sure that, and recording all of this, because this is the quantitative information that's going to allow you to have data points from a qualitative interview. And from there, being able to ask, okay, here are the problems we have seen. Do you have any of these problems? And if so, could you rank them for us? And then from there, going, you know, being like, okay, can you just tell us a little bit about your worldview as it relates to this? And that's where you really start getting the nitty gritty, and you just take notes. And then you walk away from that saying, these are the kind of solutions we could build to help solve their problems. For, you know, one of the things that Teague and I, you know, have talked about is I worked with a startup that we did around 80 to 90 problem interviews, a lot with restaurants actually, to create a small, medium business management tool. So being able to go in and kind of like a Salesforce apps type of program, but without having to buy Salesforce, and say, okay, I need an accounting software, I need an HR software, I need an inventory software, and being able to connect them. We thought everybody wants all those bits and pieces to be connected together so that one thing can influence another and whatnot. And we'll also bring the best of these apps to them, and people can pick from them instead of having to have 1,000 to pick from. And we were ready to spend a ton of money to get that interconnectivity. But we went out and did problem interviews, and we said, what are your biggest problems? We found that the biggest problem people had was it was hard to find apps to use for your accounting, for your HR. And we're like, wow, that's a lot cheaper problem to solve. And we're like, you got it. We'll give it to you in a month. So
can do.
So it's making sure you're going after the right problems. And you're solving things that people want, and also solving the big hurts. You know, it's the difference between solving the vitamin problem versus solving the pain pill problem. Are you providing a vitamin, or are you providing a pain pill? People can't wait to give you money to take away pain. People have to be convinced to take vitamins.
Yes. Which is weird. Startup, you'd think that would be a perfectly logical thing, right? Do this thing that will prevent you from worse things happening.
You would, but, you know, that's not the way we work. But that being said, if you are a vitamin provider, find a pain point first. And if you solve somebody's pain, they will do whatever you tell them to do. Then you sell them as many vitamins as you want.
I like that. Solve the pain point first, and then you can sell the vitamins.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as a quick reminder, before I forget, guys, we're happy to take questions in the chat. Yes, for those of you that are just joining us, unfortunately, Seda is incognito at the moment due to what appears to be some sort of technical difficulty. Patrick, I don't know what happens if she quits and rejoins, but earlier we had some trouble getting her connected in the first place. And at this point, I'd rather just keep her connected. I think we're getting the really important stuff in our conversation. Next time we do this, if it doesn't work, I'll just print out a mask of Seda's face and just put it on mine. It'll be easier that way. And I suspect a vast improvement over what you're seeing here. So next time we'll get it right. I promise.
Or I'll just come over.
That works too. That's good. We work anytime. We're happy to host you. I think, you know, one of the things that's an interesting challenge that you're pointing to is that there's a mindset shift that's happened in the more sort of the last 10 years that, you know, we're no longer in the days of building the 5-year business plan, right? Anybody who tells you to go build a business plan for the long term is begging to be shut down. I was talking to a Georgetown professor actually who said he used to teach. He had this whole class on how to build a business plan, and you know they shut it down 6 years ago because by the time you built the business plan, your business was changing. Have you seen some of that in your business? I mean, in terms of like, have you had to? Yeah, 3 months is more than enough, really. Have you had to pivot, shift, change, iterate what you do with the work that that you've been pursuing, or has it been relatively consistent since you got started?
Consistent. For just like my business direction, or using business plans versus not?
No. Just for Lighthouse specifically.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think District Lighthouse might be the best example of this. When I first started going down the path of this idea, 3.5 years ago, it originally started as a live workspace where, similar to if you watch Silicon Valley, where Pied Piper started, where they live and then they go into the living room. Yeah. It was more of that concept of a live work, live work play. That was the value adds, and looking at it for the DC market. And we tried to launch a version of it called the District House out in Virginia, but looking at location, looking at laws, looking at, like in DC, you have to have a B&B license, a bed and breakfast license, to be able to operate something like that. And then you have to deal with health code violations and whatnot because you're serving food, even though you might not be serving food. So it's, looking at all of these challenges, if you look at going back to the concept of the business plan versus, let's say with Lean Startup, looking at a lean canvas, in the lean canvas or in any type of business plan, your idea has to be solid, your problem has to be solid, your customer group has to be solid, but also your ability to operate, your cost of operation, and your channels to getting your customers. If there's too many risks, or if the risks are too big to overcome, you have to pivot and you have to shift. And in that case, we shifted to more of the traditional co-working space, but then looking at what the existing environment, the existing landscape of co-working spaces in DC, and seeing, who's already out there. You're in a WeWork right now, for instance, and, what are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? Who are they going after? Is there an opportunity somewhere else? And then from there, we shifted into looking at veterans. And then we said, there's a bigger community than just veterans. So, being able to add the full B2G market. And then finally saying, okay, this is a good path. We're getting a lot of validation in this path. This has so far been the best direction. And then it's location. Okay. Being able to say I'm in Virginia gives us a different story and a different concept than if we're in DC. So what's the best one? I was doing I did a talk actually at WeWork a few months back, and I was really struggling with this, Virginia versus DC. And it was a lot of I noticed there was a lot of, those who were looking at B2G as a startup concept. And so I just started polling people and saying, would you rather I be in DC or Maryland, or DC, Maryland, or Virginia? And if I was not in where your preference was, would you still come? And just testing this and not trying to assume, and just going out and having conversations and then letting it pivot me in that direction.
Sure. So Nick DePalma was asking, how did you target spaces or markets to investigate problems? What were your criteria for, sort of best fit for what you wanted to pursue there?
For the space, or for for just in general, like how I went about it?
Not for physical spaces, but for metaphorical spaces.
Yeah. Or I guess Nick says either, really, but let's stick with the meta. Let's stick with the high, let's say up
high
here
level
first,
concept.
and then we'll get down to the low level. Yeah.
It really came from all the problem interviews. It's listening to what people say when you stop asking them questions as well, because then they'll also begin to tell you their thoughts that you may not even have seen the direction. Even looking at B2G, my father works for the Navy, and I was telling him this, my co-working idea, and he started telling me all the people that, worked right around him that said, like, they were sick of going to, he works at the Navy Yard, they were sick of going to Lot 38 or Starbucks or any of the coffee, places. And then after the Navy Yard shooting, the people in that building, the different companies from Regis to Booz Allen who had extra office space, just let them move in until they found another office space for them. And it's just like, there's so many opportunities for this flexible space, and everybody's beginning to use it, and then I started looking into it and researching and said, okay, wow, this is not just here. This is something that's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
Over the last 5 years, there's over 3,000 co-working spaces in the country or in the world. And I'm like, wow, okay. And it's just that rabbit hole, one rabbit hole after another, that conversations take you down. And then you find a place where you feel comfortable too. Because just because the rabbit hole takes you there doesn't mean that you're good at being there. Your skill, it doesn't mean that your skill set can solve that problem.
Yeah.
So, and if you find yourself in that rabbit hole, you're like, well, I don't know if I'm good at this. Let me go down another one and see if it's a better fit in that direction. Similarly, looking at, other businesses I've seen, people say, well, I'm, okay, looking at the Lean Canvas. Lean Canvas says, what is your differentiator?
Mm-hmm.
What is your differentiator? And people, say, my thing is better. My thing is faster. Yeah. My thing is smarter. That's not your differentiator. Your differentiator is, what is it that you do or somebody on your team does that if somebody stole your idea and started developing it on their own today,
right,
that would still make you get out the door, be better than them? And it may be that somebody. It may be that you are just a really fast reader and you have to read this big document and that guy's a slower reader. I mean, it sometimes it's something simple, stupid. Sometimes it is a higher level. I've created this software when I was in college and I can plug it right into here. It might be an IP type thing.
Yeah.
But it's if your idea is stolen today, what is going to make you successful and not the guy who stole it?
I like it.
And it's finding that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand the B2G market. I have been working on the co-working. So it's like, these are my differentiators and I have these contacts that will get me out the door. And that's why I found that this rabbit hole I'm comfortable in that I've gone down.
If you're going to go down one, you better be happy with it. I'm with you on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I hope that answers his question.
Finding a comfortable rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I like it.
Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah.
Going back for a second to customer interviews, do you have a favorite story from a customer interview where someone said something totally unexpected, or where you suddenly had that epiphany moment, or is it just sort of the accumulated knowledge from a whole set of interviews?
I mean, you obviously have an accumulated knowledge of a whole set of interviews because you wouldn't be doing them if it wasn't for that. But that being said, I think a byproduct of doing customer and problem interviews that people sometimes forget about is the fact that you are also creating your first customers through problem interviews. And two that stick out to me. One is, I was meeting with a small restaurant chain, small in that they have about 30 units throughout the country. Mm-hmm. And we had met in one of their restaurants, and I couldn't record it because it was too loud. Even though the guy was like, you can try to record it. And I said, okay. So we sat down, and I had very strictly not told him what I did or like what my product did. And we didn't have a website yet at the time. And so we were going through the problem interviews, and it was all about him, and obviously all about kind of identifying the problem. And about halfway through, intermittently throughout, he kept saying, what do you like? How can you solve my problem?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, let's keep talking about your problem. And he kept asking for the solution. And I go, we'll talk about that at the end. Let's get all the way through.
Yeah.
And then by the end, he had come, we had kind of identified his core problem. And then before I even got a chance to tell him what we did, he goes, so how much would it be how much could I give you to solve my problem? He didn't even care and that's the point, is they get that you are there solving their problem, and they understand that you understand their problem.
Right.
And they can't wait to give you money for you to solve their problem. And those are your first customers. And and that's something that I kind of went, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. And luckily at the time, he was also the right type of pilot / early innovator to be able to go with to help you develop the product. But you also have to be careful that if somebody starts jumping across the table to give you money, that they're the right person to partner with. So the second interview that kind of sticks out in my head is had a similar problem interview, same problem. It was in the same problem interview set with Subway, which is obviously a bazillion units. And it was the chief technical person at Subway. And I had, met her we were eating lunch next to each other. And I did an impromptu problem interview, kind of not as structured as I would normally do.
Yeah.
And she kept asking me, so what do you do? And I said, oh, we'll get there. And so I just kept asking her questions because I didn't want to taint her and like her line of thinking with telling her what I did. And then afterwards I said, okay, I got the data I wanted from her problems. And then I told her what we were developing. We were a little further along at that point. And she goes, well, we'll pilot it. And while that you're just like, oh my God, of course you want Subway to pilot it. But do you? You have to be really, if you fail at that level, you may tank your whole product. Yeah. So, we talk about in Lean, like failing often,
right?
But you have to also fail safe. You have to create environments that you can fail safely.
Yeah.
And fail with people that will allow you to fail and will help you fix those failures. And
it has to be
somebody like
that doesn't torpedo the entire company. You have to actually have a chance to learn from your failure, right?
Exactly, and adjust to it and go back out to that exact same group.
Yeah.
And while she may have been great and she may have let us do it, it's not worth the risk.
Well, and in truth, I mean, there's also the challenge of there's so many different challenges when you find somebody to partner with on something like that, even if the opportunity seems to drop out of thin air, right? I mean, it's so hard to find that, what's the phrase I'm looking for, that sort of magic mix of opportunity, timing, and partners, right? And about having a failure budget as a learning investment, Nick's absolutely right. If you don't have somebody who understands that, that's a huge problem down the road. I recently had a client who did that, who was asking constantly, here's the problem, I think we need to solve it. I'm like, we've answered the solving of it actually for you several times, but here, let me give you to Teague and he can maybe help. And that did not work out for us because that client was decidedly incorrect for all of us. You gotta pick your battles, right? I mean, I think, would you agree that's where it comes down to, that ultimately, even if you're open to the opportunity, that unless somebody gives you that space for failure, unless they give you that sense of flexibility, it's probably not right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just as much a feature in your product development as as having a different widget on your app or I mean, it's the difference of what your goals are. I mean, if your goal is to build custom solutions for the big boys, if you will, then it's the right pilot. If you're trying to build a full platform that a lot of people can plug into, then it's not going to be the right. I mean, it's also what your mission and who you envision your customers are in the long run.
Yep.
And being able to stick to it. I mean, the hardest part is like you see this money sitting in front of you, and you're like, wow, that could fund me for like 2 years. Oh my God, that would be awesome.
Oh, that would be nice.
But those 2 years are over, and
if it's been 2 years in the wrong direction, it's not very useful money.
True that.
Exactly. And you can't move away from it, and you're stuck doing that thing, or working with that company that may not be in the overall vision of where you want to go with your startup.
Yeah. Well, again, just want to remind everybody, we are certainly open to more questions. Teague and I are happy. We can happily talk to Seda as long as we have time for, but we'd love to hear your comments or questions as well. So keep them coming. We'd love to hear them. Teague, I think I was cutting you off a moment ago.
I was just going to say that Nick DePalma said in the chat, or quoted in the chat, you're either succeeding or you're learning, which is a fun quote. Although I think that all of us can think of examples of folks who, did not succeed and completely failed to learn the lesson from that.
Me, several times in my youth.
Yeah. I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
At least.
I believe there's at least one or two police reports that would attest to that. Seda, you were also saying something, I believe.
There was another question that asked, "Is this a beard chat?" No, I don't have a beard.
No. But let me tell you, if you were to rock a beard, I feel like it would best both of us. I know, Mark, you can't see. We've already gone over this. Unfortunately, we're having some technical issues. Nothing we can do about it at this point. But we're gonna push forward because we believe in the power of.
Apparently, it may be fixed in the replay in the recording, but we won't know that until we get there.
It's true, or at the very least, it'll sound like she's a ghost voice. But yes, Team Blab is on the case. Seda, I would also love to ask, you talked a lot about B2G, which business to government relations. How does that differ from B2B or B2C? What are the considerations you have to think of in that particular realm that are different than others?
Sure. Some things that are as cosmetic as just the way a company shows themselves, so let's say, for instance, they're holding, they have a meeting with a potential subcontractor, or one of their clients is coming to their offices. It's how they present themselves is different. You're not going to see, most of the time, you're not going to see the whole hoodie with a t-shirt and jeans concept at at the Navy Yard, or, a DOT or anything like that. So there's the facade obviously is different. And the other things that are different is also the way that the community interacts with each other. So, one of the things that we kept hearing over and over again as a problem is the ability as B2G companies grow their companies is finding subcontractors and connecting with others in their community and understanding what their skill sets are, as well as validating whether they're any good at it or not.
Yeah. By the way, Seda, you suddenly just magically popped back up for everybody. So that's why you're getting a lot of love right now.
Oh, good. Hi.
There we go.
This is people have liked what you've been saying, and they can finally show it.
It's true. So the subcontract, talk a little bit about that, because I know that for those not familiar with working with the government, getting on a GSA schedule is a fairly painful process. It is not simple. It is not direct. It makes, responding to an RFP seem like, playing in a sandbox versus climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Can you talk about that and why it's so valuable to have, subcontractors that you can reach out to?
Sure. You touch on something that, I want to hit on first, is the ability to even find different contracts that you want to go after, and then the ability to qualify to even be able to, submit yourself, whether you're getting on the GSA schedule, and understanding navigating through all the things that you have to do to even be able to work in this space or to operate in this space. And then understanding, different types of security requirements and whatnot on a personal level as well as a business level. And so after you've done all that, so after you've navigated through being able to even do business with the government, you find a contract that you want to go after, and you see that you have a skill gap. And you say, but I can still go after this. And you find somebody that basically subcontracts that skill set to be able to, I always envision the idea of being in a room, being in, let's say, the bullpen area, similar to, like, let's say what you guys have at WeWork, and being able to, lean back after you're looking at a requirement and say, oh, hey, Bob, you want to come in on this with me? And you know him, you've trusted him, you know that he has that skill set, or his company has that skill set, and being able to make those connections to be able to go after those bigger contracts. Yeah. And in addition to that is being able to also have the flexibility of being outside of just one office. Because the other thing that government contracting sometimes tries to throw you curveballs is they say, oh, your office needs to have a 5-mile proximity to where the on-site work is going to be done. Or So the State Department, for instance, likes to do this. But there's a lot, and other people can probably tell you that other departments, they'll always see it. And for instance, there's a U.S. company that's a fairly large company that is in Tyson's, but the contract that they're going after is in Roslyn, which is over 5 miles, even though it probably only takes 5 minutes on 66 when there's no traffic.
So it never takes 5 minutes.
Yeah, so never, but it's at midnight sometimes.
Yeah.
But they have to get a secondary office within 5 miles so that they can go for that contract.
Yeah.
So they qualify. So also being able to get, have those, go after all these different types of problems that people may not know that is that big of a deal. But if you start saying, we can help solve this problem. I always say, like, if the person jumps across the table to give you a hug or give you money because you're solving a problem, then you're solving the right one. And that's the one you should go after as a startup.
Yeah.
Because people are jumping across the table to give you a hug.
It's the Cookie Monster moment. Or the shut up and take my money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love my reference? Cool. Well, we've got a few more minutes. If anybody has any more questions, you're free to ask. Otherwise, I'm sure we can vamp for a few more minutes. Seda, was there any topic?
And questions before we jump in, and questions not necessarily even just for Seda, but also if you have questions about your own business, you've got a couple of lean startup experts here who would be happy to give you some advice. So anybody who wants to ask a question about themselves instead of a question about us is welcome to jump in.
It's true. It's not all about us. It's just all about me. Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah, obviously.
Sada's like, I'm so tired of your crap already. So while we see if anybody jumps in, I mean, was there, any other topic that you're passionate about, things that are on your mind that you wanted to chat about for our last few minutes?
Well, I do have my fantasy football draft tomorrow night. And seeing if
I have one tonight.
Good.
And my keeper is Brandon Marshall. He's been a strong performer for me for the last couple seasons.
But besides that, that's on my mind. There's
we lose 6-1.
There's another lean concept, or it's not necessarily a lean concept, it's just a concept in general that Teague and I were talking about a while ago, and we ended up coming up with a new name. Have you guys heard of the concept of growing the biggest pumpkin?
No, that's new to me.
Where it's to grow a really big pumpkin, like the ones you see at the big fairs.
Yeah.
You have pumpkins kind of grow on a vine, and as the pumpkins are growing, you see which one's growing faster, the ones that are growing faster. And then the ones that aren't growing faster, you clip them off. And because they're not going to grow that fast.
Right.
And you keep doing this until you have one pumpkin that is growing super big and super fast.
Because as you're pruning off those smaller pumpkins, all of the nutrients and all of the resources are going into one pumpkin. Right? You're pruning off all of your bad ideas so that you can invest in the one that is actually growing.
Right. So this is a reverse of the classic spreading yourself too thin problem.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
When I first set out to kind of look at what I wanted to do, and I had District Lighthouse as an idea, Lighthouse Global Business, and I actually had a nonprofit for veterans thrown in there too, and started going after all this. And first thing that one of my advisors said to me was like, you need to pick one. And this is the one I would pick. And they said, Lighthouse Global Business, you've already got customers, you're already moving forward. That's the pumpkin that's growing bigger, faster.
Yeah.
And as, after a year of that, and in the back of my head, I always kind of kept the District Lighthouse moving, just kind of picking away at it, doing problem interviews whenever I got opportunities. And then all of a sudden, I had people coming back to me saying, well, whatever happened to that District Lighthouse that you were going to do? That's really big for me right now.
Yeah.
I'd be a customer. And I remember the first time I told Teague this, and he goes, it's like a zombie pumpkin. And so
that's perfect.
You remember this?
Mm-hmm.
So he's just like, wow,
totally.
It's the zombie pumpkin. It's the pumpkin that, just kept growing on its own and kept moving forward and moving itself forward. And that's and then getting the validation and then starting to do the testing again on that and saying, okay, make sure if I'm going to do this, it's going to go in the right direction. Again, don't put all your time, money, effort towards something if it's not really there.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I would attribute this to is the fact that I made sure I had a community. I made sure that I was talking to tons of people. And I kept up with that community. It's the networking aspect. It's the networking for a reason, not just networking for the sake of handing my business card out, but having the relationships and then people coming back and saying, oh, I've been thinking about you and I've been thinking about your idea. And that's the best kind of validation to move yourself forward as you can get in a business. So, keep talking about everything and prune off the pumpkins, but maybe don't stop talking about it. If somebody asks you, mention it. I was also working on these things, but this is what I'm focusing on now, and see if that zombie pumpkin doesn't grow.
I like it. Well, I think that's an awesome. Oh, we got one last question, Patrick, right under the wire. I'm super excited for you. Did you ever come across Evan Radowski? He does what you do, but from the U.S. to Europe with a firm called Atlantic Leap. I have not, no. But there is a lot of space, a lot of people in this space that do different types of things. Most of my clients are from Turkey and Belgium, and I have a client that goes from here, from the U.S. abroad as well. Interesting. There you go. But it's a pretty cool field, and there's definitely room for a lot of people if anybody else is interested in it. Very cool. Hit me up. We can chat. No, you, Furkan, it was awesome to have you help us fix that. Thank you. And Christine, the Twitter chat on Lean Payroll, I'm definitely going to check that out. If you guys are interested, that's in the chat as well. So you should be sure to check that out. Seda, you've been incredibly generous with your time, particularly through the technical difficulties of today. So really from all of us to you, thank you. That was awesome. Thank you. This was fun. Yeah. Teague, anything from you before we wrap it up? Yeah. So folks who are listening, join us again tomorrow. We will be on a special time at 11:30 Eastern for a talk with Paul and Brittany Medeiros, the authors of I'm going to find the title of their book in a second, about getting your UX portfolio together. They're going to ask, we are going to ask them questions. They're going to tell us all about it. Brittany is a designer at Microsoft, and wow. Paul is a designer at Power Supply. And they're going to tell us all about UX design and putting together a good portfolio, and we'll talk about some other things as well. So join us tomorrow. Absolutely. And in the meantime, if you're interested in more about StartupJab, we're startupjab.com, #StartupJab. Seda, before we close it out, every plug you want to give, let's hear it. Oh, gosh. Am I ready for this? Feel free, if you have any additional questions, to email me at seda@lighthouseglobalbusiness.com or hit me up on Twitter. And if you'd like to learn more about District Lighthouse, just drop me an email, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. Or if you just want to chat, I'm here for you. Very cool. In the meantime, you can find Teague and I also on Twitter. We're happy to answer questions or concerns. Each of us has our own separate businesses, which we're going to try really hard not to be super salesy about, but we're happy to chat with you guys about that stuff as well. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. All we ask is, if you like this, come and hang out with us next time. Tell your friends. We're leaning this. We're seeing if this works. We're not 100% sure what it's going to look like or how it's going to be in the long term. So your feedback helps us to know how to better, manage this. So, give us some feedback on the site, tweet at us, yell at us. I'm on here constantly, as is Teague. And we will be around for you to give us some feedback. Thanks, guys, for having me. Thanks, Seda. Thanks for coming. And everybody in the chat, we'll see you next time. Take care.